Welcome to The Science and the Sacred. I'm your host, Sinead Brophy, and in this podcast, we'll cover both the physiology and the spirituality of what it means to be a cyclical being. I'd love to invite you, my health conscious and spiritually curious friend, to dive deep with me as we embrace the power of cyclical self-care to nourish our minds, bodies, and souls.
So, Kitty, thanks so much for coming on today. First guest of The Science and the Sacred. So, yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to have you on. And I know your work, and we were chatting a lot there before we started recording, but I'd love for you maybe to introduce yourself and like the work that you do and why you do it, just for anyone who's listening who maybe hasn't come across you and your work before.
Thanks, Sinead. Yes, it's lovely to be here and an honor to be the first guest. I don't think I knew that, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
I suppose who am I in the work is I suppose I go by a menstruality mentor, and that basically means that I hold spaces for women through the full spectrum of womanhood. So from their first bleed to the last bleed, into the elder years, into the mature years. And I suppose I've had to niche down in the last couple of years because that's quite a broad spectrum. And I had to learn then that I couldn't be all women. I couldn't be one woman for all women. So as much as I'm passionate about all those thresholds and supporting women through those changes, I decided to kind of really focus on the menstrual years because that's where I am. And I suppose I have been really focusing on just nurturing and nourishing my own fertility. And then I suppose as well through Repeal the Eighth, the movement back 5 years ago now, I suppose that's when we actually repealed, but I suppose over the last kind of 7-8 years, I really saw that was a void for people experiencing abortion in Ireland, that there was just zero conversation around that. And I was in a lot of circles, and it was like this elephant in the room, and it always came up, but it came up in the small little 2 or 3 circles. And I suppose I'm so conscious of how trauma impacts our body, but also I'm really conscious of how trauma impacts our bloodline. And so if we've come from a bloodline, or our ancestry and has had a lot of trauma in there through womanhood, I'm really conscious how that's carried on through the lineage. So I suppose it just became clear to me how deeply rooted shame was in the Irish psyche of the womb. And for me then, I suppose womb sovereignty just became this, it just was so loud. It was just like, I just need to let women know that there's somebody out there that is saying that their experience is valid, they're worthy of love and care and healing, because that's not a narrative that is offered. And all we hear is criticism, judgment around, the abortion topic. And I suppose that's the thing, it is a highly sensitive conversation. So for me, it was kind of just coming in with as much compassion as possible and letting people know that it was a safe, secure space, and whatever their story, whatever their choice, that they could come and just be with a clan of women and people that were saying, I have your back. But it was so silent before. So I get quite emotional when I think of it, because I've sat with so many women, and it's funny because I can see the relief in their eyes, I can feel it in their bodies, and I can feel it in the space. Just like shame is so powerful when it's like a gremlin. It thrives in silence. And I think when worries are shared and shame is held and shared, you can just see it like sand through your fingers, that the power of the shame just starts to lessen. Like it loosens in people's bodies. And I suppose that's been my own story as well. I suppose it's just the relationship with shame as an Irish woman. And the mother and baby homes are in my own family. I don't think I don't think we'd have many people that wouldn't have a connection to some kind of institution in whether it's their grandfather or their grandmother. There was something of like to do with control or some controlled institution through religion or colonization. So I think for me it's pretty deep.
Yeah, I know it, but it is, that's, I think we often come at these things at so surface level, but actually, to your point, you go back through the layers and it's so generational, not whether that's directly or just as a society as a whole.
Yeah. And I suppose it took me a while as well to get really clear and confident and just strong in the work, because I can remember when I first started putting myself out there, how afraid I was. And starting to post support on my social media, on my Facebook or my Instagram stuff, and just feeling, am I going to lose community? Are people going to stop coming to my yoga classes? Like, this was my livelihood. But it was mad because the integrity of it for me was just too big. And actually it was the making of me, because I had decided to just say, no, I'm putting my voice to something that I don't see done in my country. And it was like, not that I didn't have a choice. Of course I had a choice. That's what this whole thing is about. But like, it's like it was totally part of my path. And looking back in reflection, I can just see how integral that was for me as a woman's worker and a woman's facilitator. And I still get women to these days, to this, like I got one only like I think 6 weeks ago, writing to me about the work that I done with somebody 5 or 6 years ago. And
It's
they're
incredible
now to say, and so we never know that butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Just even, I always say that to the women I'm mentoring at the moment. I'm like, put something out there, start putting the heart in your work out there, and people will see it. There's loads of lurkers out there, and mostly people who need the work won't like, interact or share it, because there could be deep-rooted shame in their body. But you advocating and being a voice for something that is represents their story, don't underestimate that. So whether that's one person, like, it's huge. So yeah, it's been quite full on, I'm not going to lie. Look, in reflection to it, because I suppose I've ended up getting here, and the root of it's being through shame and pain and suffering. But for me, it's totally been this thing of the alchemist turning your pain into purpose.
I love that analogy, and I loved your analogy of the butterfly effect, because I do think that's so important, because you have a conversation with one woman, one person, and then they have a conversation with their friends, or they tell someone about something, or they introduce a concept, or even just starting the conversation, because I'd say for so long you couldn't even start the conversation, and not that far like ago, or even for some people that's their lived experience right now, where they might not be able to talk about that. So to see someone having those conversations in a safe way, in a safe circle, or on a platform like that, like, it's hugely inspiring, and even just thought-provoking for people who maybe didn't even know that that's an option.
I know. And I think what's, considering we're 5 years on from repealing the 8th, it's like women still don't have, and people who are pregnant who need like abortion as a healthcare option. It's still not, like, I think there's still 8 hospitals that aren't providing the service in the country. So if you're in rural Ireland, you know, so again, it's people in rural Ireland that are suffering from this. And I think that's what was so remarkable about repeal, was with such a landslide of a vote, I think people really underestimated rural Ireland, and they forgot that this story would belong to some of those women too, or the mothers of women, or people that didn't have that option, or maybe they'd had to go into Magdalene laundries or mother and baby homes. So I think, for looking back at it, it's huge. It still brings me to tears, because it was a massive movement for the women of Ireland, and it gave us back, like, Ireland's being changed from that. And it, like, look at what we're doing, for the likes of us to be able to come forward and be so bold and so brave and courageous in this work, and just say, yeah, I work with the menstrual cycle. Like, that's my job, my title, my website, and everything is like, oh, the menstrual cycle. You know, 10 years ago, that still would be like, sure, to be honest, even for me 5 years ago, and even still to this day, I get people, they'll go, oh, what? And my partner works in like TV. So if we're at something, they're like, oh, what do you do? And Sam's like, I work in TV. And then they're saying, Kitty, what do you do? And I'd be like, oh, I work with like in menstrual health. And they'll go, oh, Jesus, we'll go back to Sam, so will we? And I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're right. It is much more digestible and acceptable. Just like, Jesus, who wants to talk about that? But then it has been amazing, because, and it's not just from men, like, I've had that from women, you know, I've had kind of like, why do you need to even talk about abortions and miscarriage? And they might say, I had one, and like, I was fine. And I'm like, but that's your story.
And that's your experience. Not everyone has that experience.
I'm like, I am so delighted for you that you got to move through your experience, not feeling the impacts of it massively. I'm sure it impacted you in some way, but I'm like, but what about the people that this has just held them prisoner in their body? And they're like, well, I just don't want to hear about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, well, that's not really, I'm here for the women and the people who do, the couples who do need it. So
but the people will find you. Like, I think that's one of the biggest thing I learned, Stephanie, about like just working for yourself, or doing something that's maybe a little bit like left of field, or, you know, that might be an uncomfortable topic for some people, or an unusual topic to be specializing in, is that the people who need you will find you, or the people who want to work with you will find you. And everyone has their own flavor and their own approach and their own story, and that will resonate with different people. So the people who need you will be able to come, and it's about letting the people who maybe don't get it, or who don't need you, go, you know.
And that's what I always say, I'm not here to convert anyone. I'm just a service here in my country for people who are ready and able and wanting. And then sometimes some people come and they're like, I don't even know why I'm here, but I'm here. Like, I've had people come to my yin yoga training, and they're like, I hate women's circles. Like, this I hate women's circles, and hate all your posts that you put up. And sometimes when you acknowledge things like yonis, or you talk about cunt power, or you vaginas and vulvas, and I'd be like, well, it's our female anatomy, you know. And I've just said, like, aren't you pretty amazing that you've come on a training with me, knowing that the baseline of my work is true. Like, everything, like even yoga, I come at it from a female body, from a female endocrine system. And I was just like, so maybe let's just trust in the process and take it really gentle and really slowly. So there are people that come in kicking and screaming. I'm like, I didn't, you signed up. So and you can see a breakthrough. You know? And often that will have, I suppose, in our world, it's probably called a breakdown, because, you know, for people to come and then let their story be heard or witnessed, and by somebody who's like, I'm not afraid of your story. I'm not afraid. Like, I've heard loads of sad stories and traumatic stories. It's not my story. Like, it's, come, I'm here. And I suppose for me, that's been a hard lesson to learn as well, was how to navigate those hard stories and the big fields. But like I've said to you even before we were chatting, like, I'm just learning to get meticulous with my energy. And also, if I'm working with people now, I'm real big mammy energy, you know. So I suppose will I say a flaw? Probably not a flaw. I don't even know if
Idiosyncrasy?
I suppose my kink in the chain was I was too mothering at times, and wanted to just go in and do everything for the person. Whereas now I've had to really learn to pull back and just be like, no, you do it. I'm providing a space, but you very much so, you need to do the work. Because I suppose for me that was I notice in this work, I don't know if you see this, but there's a lot of mother and sister wounds with the women, but across the board, like, nobody is exempt from that. I don't think that hasn't been modeled in society, that look at women, they're great, let's look after them, let's champion them. Like, even little girls are kind of, even, you know, it's just in our narrative. And our healthcare for women hasn't been a priority, especially in Ireland. And I'm sure in other countries, you only have to look at America to, like, just clutch your pearls in shock. But yeah, I think for me, that's been a real big learner in it. Was like, right, well, look, I have to get very real in this. You know, I am meeting a lot of trauma, and I am meeting a lot of wounds, and there's a big expectation of me here, and I actually can't heal these people's wounds. And I think once I was able to just be really honest with that and be like, I'm not your healer, I'm your facilitator, I'm your mentor. And especially, like, if something comes up in a conversation, I'm like, that's beyond my capacity. I have a fantastic list of skilled practitioners that I'm going to refer you on to, because that's just beyond my scope. And it means then I've been able to, I can work with, I can work deeply, but I don't have to put it all on myself to feel like I'm here to be this person in front of me's savior, because that doesn't work. That's another form of patriarchy. If I'm like,
exactly, you're the one with the answers, and they have to look outside themselves, and 100%.
And that's it, because they get to hand the power, their power, over to you. Whereas for me, it's been really purposeful, because I think the word power is quite loaded. It can be quite triggering as well for a lot of people, because their power has been taken away from them. For me, I think it's being able to just reframe it and be like, well, how can we find our purpose amongst this, and how can we do it with as much clarity and integrity, so that we're bolstered, you and the person you're working with are both bolstered through it. So I mean, that's been a long journey, and I'm nowhere near out there. I'm always very aware that there's no end to this. And sure, I'm haven't hit my perimenopause stage yet. I'm 42, crawling up to 43. So yeah, it's really interesting for me just to see. That's why it was important for me just to focus on these menstrual years, because I was so in it and living it. So I was I'm really able to bring lived and learned experience. And you're right in it. So I do a lot. I do have lots of spaces that I can bring in pregnancy, because that's part of menstrual years. As for breastfeeding, like that pregnancy release, any kind of I suppose traumatic release from the womb. And then I have different ways that I can support women through those menopause years, but through a different aspect, because I don't have the lived and learned experience of somebody who's gone through menopause. So I would offer a different type of space for that person. But the option is there for somebody to have the space that wants to work with me. Like, say, for example, I've worked with women who've had hysterectomies overnight or lost their cycle due to illness. And so they're then just thrown into, I suppose, spontaneous menopause, perimenopause, and to work on, to go back and do the menarche work with these women has been absolutely divine, because they are going through second spring. So then to go back and revisit that stage of their life, if they haven't gone there, because it is that new initiation into life. So for me, like, there's no end to the work, and I do find that I had to diversify it there for a bit, because it just got very period heavy for a while. No, I didn't mean, that's no pun intended.
Yeah, you're like, no.
Yeah. But it is, I think it's such a huge spectrum, and I do think each threshold does deserve its time to shine, and deserves to be witnessed, and especially the likes of us that are the light in our bloodline, that have come in to break this generational, like, to bring instead of focusing on generational trauma, like, that we're the generational healer, and we're coming in. No, it stops with us. Like, I'm the last woman now in my bloodline, or my generation, that's going to be like, carry on those limiting beliefs that may have come down through our family, through our community, through our religion and stuff like that. So, like, that for me, it's been a real beautiful and hard and confronting journey of how to keep turning the hard, sticky, ugly bits that society, like the parts that are drenched in hardship and suffering and grief and shame, and reframe it. So, like, look at it as opposed to, generational healing. No, we're generational trauma, we're generational healers, and being the light in your bloodline. And I suppose then the beauty of that then is just, you'll know this, the more you do this work, the more you get to unveil your authentic self. And
100%.
An amazingly difficult woman in society.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, they silenced me for so long and now they don't. But I would agree about the layers and how it's, I think, from the outside in, menstrual cycle awareness and learning about, like, even just tracking your cycle and kind of, going through the process of learning to trust your body, whatever way that is, and learning these tools.
Yeah.
For me, I think what's blown my mind open is, and I guess it's kind of like in yoga, where you go through the different koshas in the different body, where you kind of start with the physical body, you learn what's going on with your menstrual cycle, like your symptoms, all this kind of stuff. And then you start going in, you're like, oh, actually my mood changes. And then this, and then you kind of get to this core, and it's just like, you just see that actually there's cycles everywhere, and that all of this work is a tool to really get to know you and the world and your relationships. And like, it's just incredibly powerful. And I don't think you can really fully appreciate that until you start doing the work, until you start, being like, oh wow, even reframing menstrual cycles as something that's negative to something that's positive, and it being a power rather than a hindrance. Like, that's huge psychologically, to be like, actually this thing that happens to me every month is a benefit. It's not a negative.
Well, that's if we have the opportunity and the privilege to do it, because I also know women that I'm really mindful. I have lovely little Irish. I like to bring in the Irish language, and I have be singing like Grama Bryn, which is Grama Bryn, and that's, I love my womb. But like, how do you love your womb if you've got chronic endometriosis? And so I know women that have to have hysterectomies because they've had several laparoscopies. So I think the way I would look at that for people like this is to just say, well, what if you can look at it as if it stops with you here now, and then you can share with your children, your sons and your daughters, not just your daughters or people that menstruate, that that your womb story probably has been really stressful and upsetting. There has been this resentment there, but you want that to stop in this lifetime, so that your children are growing up feeling they can honor and respect and feel connected to their cycle. Because that's the thing with something like endometriosis, like that can be hereditary.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I'm really interested in, is looking at how these things are passed down through the bloodline. So, if you think myself and yourself and all the other menstruality advocates and teachers and educators and stuff like that, some of us mightn't see the dramatic change that we are working towards. But it's like that saying, like, wise men plant trees they'll never climb or sit under.
Absolutely.
We're absolutely those wise women that are, we're planting seeds and are the great grandchildren and the youngsters that come after us, because I see it in my own family. Like, my family are incredibly supportive around this, and I've never got any slagging off them. I mean, my brother-in-law laughed when he found out that I didn't like jam and I don't like ketchup. And my mother was like, oh no, she doesn't like red things. And he was like, what do you mean red? Everything in her whole business model it's
her
red.
whole brand is red.
Like, I don't know anyone who wears as much red, and they all just felt my family hadn't even copped. And I said, yeah, but I don't have a problem with red menstrual blood, and I don't have I like fresh strawberries. I was like, I just don't like artificial flavors, but it was so funny that's as close as the slagging has come for me, which is that's not always the way with people. They can be a bit kind of dismissive, like same as like if an artist in the family, or go and get a real job, whereas
exactly.
I mean, my work is women's social justice, I suppose, for women, but that's what my mother did. So why wouldn't it be normal? And in other families it might be abnormal, but I grew up watching somebody advocate for women her whole life. So
and how amazing is that? Because I'd say a lot of people don't get that experience, so as you were saying, it is such a privilege to see that, or be at least in an environment where you can do your work in a way that not only is it not ridiculed, but it's actually actively supported and modeled. It's amazing.
It's lovely. And I suppose even say as that, like when we were as a family, or say for repeal or any of the marches, like we'd go as a family,
Incredible.
And it was like generations showing up for Manana Hair, and like, so I think that's where the healing comes. That's where the power of it, and I am at that point now where I'm like, I'm not here to convert you. I just want it to be easy, and I have enough courage and conviction in what I'm doing. I've more than enough experience, and I have enough trust in my ability to just say, whoever needs to get here, I'm here. And if I'm not available, well, I know a red clan that is.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
It's great. It's so good. I'm actually, Kitty, I'm just going to pause this for a second and open the window, because my laptop is literally going to explode with the heat. So 1 second. I'll be like, Tom, put this bit out. What's the dog's name?
That's Winnie Wagtail. I got her for my 40th birthday, and
lovely.
Apricot Angel, and she's so special. She's actually I have a kids workshop now for age 7+. It's kind of could be 6 to 9 year olds, and it's called Magic Blood. It's inspired by a little live that I done with Sarah Sproul. Do you know her?
I love her. She's amazing.
Yeah, so
such a big fan.
I had a chat with her about age appropriate language with children, and then the following month, myself and the boys, at the time 7 and 2, We went on holiday and Winnie got her first bleed.
Okay. I actually think I saw this on your stories.
Yeah.
Um,
So I got to have you
talk
got
about it.
this?
Yeah. This recording. Yeah.
And I I ended up, that was how I started. I told our 7-year-old about magic blood, and because there was spots of blood everywhere, and I was like, she's not in pain. I said, this is blood. That means that when this happens, it means she could get pregnant. She could make a baby, and that magic blood will grow a baby. And he was like, oh wow. And now he's older now, so he's not as like
Yeah, it's not as
really,
amazed.
well, no, I think he's really starting to kind of grasp that, like, oh, okay, there's a bit more to this.
Yeah.
So then there was a conversation of that led to then, well, how does the baby get in there? And but then I was able to turn that into, well, this is what happens to a doggy, but actually it happens to women as well. And
Yeah.
I also have magic blood every month. So now I've turned that into a little story that
Oh, gorgeous.
this is how to talk. It's kind of age appropriate. So instead of like trying to do a workshop with children, it's like bringing Winnie into school with her period pants on.
Oh, I love that.
And she's such a cuddler. Like she's a really, she's so used to children. And sometimes our little man tries to straddle her like a pony, and like, but they're best friends, you know. So that's what I mean. It's in every aspect. Like even the dog is part of it.
Yeah, I love that though. And like I think, as you were saying, like about being the seed planters, it's like these conversations, it passes down because it normalizes it. Like I remember again did a kind of a women's circle. It was going back to your first bleed, and I remember sharing the story where I was like, and it was funny because I don't really remember it that well, but mum was like, do you not remember it? She was like, dad brought you home flowers and you had it. And I've got a twin brother, and supposedly Matthew was like, why does Sinead get flowers and I'm not getting flowers? And you know, they marked it, and I was like, wow, that's actually for the time, you know, is so progressive. Yeah, so I was like, you know, it's probably unsurprising that I ended up in this work, but I was like, that's such a, that ritual, even though it's in the grand scheme of things is such a small gesture, but like the fact that so many people wouldn't have that. And then I do think that that's at least fed into me, and I don't know if it's been your experience as well, where I do love the ritual of things. Like I do love marking, as you said, the thresholds, because it's, you know, I guess especially in Ireland, it's maybe we, you know, I know for myself, I was never really part of the Catholic Church. You know, we kind of were christened but kind of stepped away. So you're kind of looking for that sort of ritual or sense of community or sense of connection, or that connection to something more than you. And for me, that's definitely been cycles and kind of women's circles, and that sort of the different rituals that you hold. So I've loved being able to bring that into my own life to mark different sort of stages or maybe life stages that I'm moving through, which I think is such a nice tool to have in your toolbox, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's special that you have that.
Yeah, no, I feel very lucky. Like God, again, when I kind of mum reminded me of it, I was like, yeah, wow, like that's so it's
Very
so progressive for the time, you know, like yeah, very special. So dad, if you're listening, thank you. But I'd love to know, yeah, literally. I'd love to know a little bit more about, I guess, your, I don't want to say your study in this area, because we both know that it's more than study, but I'm always curious to hear people's, I guess, progression through this. You know, oftentimes people start to work in the area of women's health because it's, as you mentioned, it's something that's happened to them, and then you know you kind of you learn. And I know that you studied with the Red School as well, and I would have been speaking in the previous episode about menstrual cycle awareness, but and you studied with UMA recently as well, so I'd love to hear a bit about that, because I think there's some amazing teachers and mentors out there.
I've had some great people. Like I'm doing a mother circle training at the moment with Kimberly Ann Johnson. Do you know her?
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Do you actually?
Amazing, because you know I'm a bit like that this course landed in my Winnie, she wants cuddles. This course landed in my email back in March. Now obviously not everyone will know this, you know this, but I only lost my mother on Christmas Eve tragically in a car accident. And I've been trying to have a baby, preparing. I don't like the word trying. I've been preparing and hopeful to have my own baby, get pregnant and give birth to a happy, healthy baby for a good while now. And then I'm also a foster mother. So for me this year, I've been really looking at how all roads for me are leading to mother. My mother dying, being catapulted into foster parent role, foster mother, and then the journey to motherhood. Now, any one of them on their own is massive.
Exactly.
So for me, I'm like, flip's sake. I'm like, why do I have to go through all these big things in one?
You're like, universe, could you not just rip feed it to me?
I was like, I saw that somebody saying there for the new year, and I just was like, oh my God, send a big memo for me. It was like on New Year's Eve, whoever has the list for God, will you ask him to take me off his bravest soldier list? And I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm like, I'm deep enough. I there's no more, like, can't take any more life lessons. So Kimberly Ann is a really great teacher for me, because she's very rooted in the nervous system, the female nervous system. But just that real, just being a woman in the work and trauma in the work of women. So like, I'm on her course with mostly American women, you know, who are very different to us. So it's very good for me, because I love that I'm not amongst a load of women that I know, because it's really comfortable again, because then you have to put yourself out there, you have to come out and do all these introductions, and so it's very powerful. So yeah, she's who I know, like, people are like, how can you be doing that and you're grieving to such an awful loss of your mother? And I'm like, because that's what I have, these are my survival skills, because I need to, you can squirm around, I can squirm around it and numb out in the feeling for a while, but then I do have to go, right, how do I make sense of this in my body? And that's what happened to Uma. I kept on hearing Uma's name, and I was I began my womb journey, and Uma was popping up left, right and center, and she was coming here lows at the time. And then I just eventually made my way to Uma. And Uma, I have to say, like, when she heard Mom had passed away, was like, she had broken her foot, so she wasn't online and stuff. But as soon as she found out towards the end of January, she just got on to me. And she said, come and see me and let me look after you. And I just dying, because I did need to be mammied, you know?
Yeah.
I needed that mothering, because like, when your mother that you're close with is whipped away from you, it's so you know, me and my mom's only 62, I'm 42. You know, we're very close. So it was just so beautiful to have that that sisterhood. Now, Uma I'd held a big, massive circle of womanhood, and we ran a huge big camp, a women's camp there before the lockdown. And Uma was like, now, as a thank you, I want you, all of us that had organized it, to come, and you can have a complimentary training. So I never got to go on that because of lockdown, and I was meant to go before Christmas, and my mum was going to mind the children, but I was like, look, it's too chaotic, it's in London, you know, I just feel actually it seems a bit busy for me. And then
I actually remember seeing that one come in. I was looking doing that, but yeah, sometimes you're like,
and I couldn't find accommodation, and I actually it was just so close to Christmas, so you know yourself, I was like, oh. But also my mother would have spent literally one of her last weeks alive looking after, which would have been lovely for her and the boys. But she actually, everyone had come up to me and said, geez, I saw your mother was in Dublin. And so I suppose on a soul level, I feel like, you know, it was her time. It was time to leave this world in physical form, but she got to see so many of her close friends and people that she'd grown up with. So the timing then, while Uma had got in touch, and I just was like, Jesus, Uma, if have you anything coming up that I can just escape and just
be held.
be in a yoga nidra cocoon, a little womb cave. She was like, I have one in my garden the end of February. And I'm not joking. I was completely in collapse. I was in a freeze response. And why wouldn't I be? Like the biggest traumatic thing in my life had happened. And in agony. And I got to Uma and just slept and slept and slept. But the thing is, and I could really feel Uma's care for me on that. So I had that. My body knows Uma so long now. If you think I started doing work with Uma, Jesus, probably like, I don't know, 7 years ago or something. And had her book before and would have been going to other people teaching womb yoga or stuff like that. So yeah, I did it. I've done Uma's Well Woman, I think it is, or something. It used to be called the Womb Yoga, and then she's changed it. But beautiful work. And then I've also done her pregnancy training, which is like, after I left that training, I actually fell pregnant myself 10 days later.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a huge catharticism when I got home from that. I woke up one night and I had a huge fear of labor. I think maybe in a past life, I had a very traumatic labor or
Yeah.
something. I had this like crazy, and my mom always said her labor on me was the easiest.
Okay.
I was always her easiest child. That's not true. I was like an absolute lunatic. It was demented. But yeah, so I'd gone on that training and it was amazing. I think about 5 days out, got up one night and I was like a cow. The sounds that were, and I was doing yoga cat cow at like 4 in the morning. And it was almost like my body started purging without anything leaving either of my body. I just felt, and I was like, just mad sounds. It was like I was in labor. I actually love watching labors. I was like making all these mad sounds. And then I conceived within about 10 days after. Now, unfortunately, my body wasn't. So there was a lot of stress going on in my body at the time. So that little soul didn't stick around to be born. But yeah, so that was a huge. Uma's been a great teacher, and she's a hoot as well, you know. And then I've done the MLP with Red School, the Menstruality Leadership Program. That was fantastic. Like, I think, you know, I'm definitely that wild, chaotic, highly creative ADHD. Yeah, there's definitely lunacy, like that lunar energy is in me. Like, and I like, I don't say that with shame. It's like that wild. It's so for me, I found that's what was great. I feel like the Red School MLP was definitely like dotting the I's and crossing the T's and just putting some boundaries around my wildness, because I could see that then, oh, hang on now, I'm just a wild feminine, and this too much wild power without the container to stop the fire spreading too much. It gets out of control. So, you know, we need to have a fire pit.
I always love the analogy of like levees on a lake, like the feminine's the river, and then you know, you've got the masculine that's the levees to try and direct it, because otherwise you just spread out everywhere and you flood, and you know, you're like ruining crops rather than it actually being directed towards something like a dam or irrigation or whatever.
So that I felt that I was starting to feel like, I suppose, as I was doing more healing with my nervous system and a lot of the trauma work I was doing, I just started to see the areas of my life that were craving and demanding this, like just being like, no, this is big girl stuff. Like, this is part of the woman wound. Like, you know, we can't be running around like that. We're just going into constant cycles of burnout. And then I also did the menstrual medicine circle training, and that's we're kind of working one-on-one, and that took its time to kind of integrate and develop. And I've loved that. I love weaving that in, because it is like getting into the psyche of the cycle, and there's so much to offer there. And I think what's really powerful in my experience of working with women in that is seeing where like, yeah, where the traumas are coming up, where the pain is, where we're blocked, where the you know, the fear of visibility, the fear of being heard, seen, the fear of you know, your sexuality, your sensuality. That's for me, like on a human level, to witness that in somebody else through their menstrual cycle, like it's gold. It really, like, it's going, Jesus, if we knew this, if
I
we were
know.
getting this a couple of times a year as adolescents, like, wow, like the women that we would just like go into,
I know.
would we even need to go to third level
Because
education?
you think about it, how many
No, at
years,
all.
yeah, exactly. But you just, it's, you know, how many years do you spend
Rejecting
kind
your
of,
cycle.
you literally, yeah, you're kind of, I was going to say
Afraid
like
of getting
shackled by the
pregnant.
patriarchy. You're trying to play the game, you're playing the game. And I'm actually listening to the heroine's journey at the moment. And, you know, they're talking about that whole experience. And then you just, you know, obviously everyone's journey through that is, where they've gone down the hero's path instead of
Yeah.
the heroine's
Heroin.
path. And you know, everyone's kind of realization maybe to sidestep that they're actually on they're living someone else's life or life plan or life structure is different for everyone. But imagine if you just didn't have to do that. You just kind of learned from when you were going through that process of becoming a woman that actually there is a different way of living and being, and that you can stand in your power, and it might be a different power to what you see around you. But
Yeah, that's
you know,
the model of the
exactly,
feminine. Like, that's,
exactly,
we've been told that women aren't as funny or as clever or as able as men, whereas it's kind of like going, right, let's say you're you're uh you're in the zoo, and a female, like a lioness gets out, and are you going to be any less afraid of her?
exactly. Yeah,
Like,
so they're the ones that do all the work anyway.
but like, or you know, you're thrown to two lions, whether they're male or female, they're both going to make mincemedia, you know.
Exactly.
So I do, I can, it's, I think it's definitely been very interesting to observe that in society of, um, you know, how women like us are up against, we're a minority, you know,
Mm.
because we are, with this work, is going to bring a lot of self-inquiry. And if people aren't ready or able for that, or
Mm.
for that, or have the practices to stay embodied through those experiences. So that's where I loved that work with the menstrual medicine circles, and that's been
Mm.
very powerful for me to work with people through that, and like not even having to have a menstrual cycle. I've worked with a lot of pregnant women, and I've worked
Yeah.
with menopausal women and stuff like that. So it's just amazing what the psyche will surface, because
Yeah.
you can literally see people dissolving years of a story that just keeps recycling itself with every cycle, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's that piece of work. And then Samantha Zapora, for the pregnancy release work, she came over specifically to do this. And
Okay.
pregnancy release means abortion, miscarriage, stillbirth, or any kind of hormonal, any kind of traumatic or stressful labor or pregnancy.
Mm.
Because, you know, you could have people that maybe they planned on having a home birth, and then all of a sudden they now have had to be rushed to hospital, and they have a prolapse, or they had to have a C-section. Again, it's like, for me, in that pregnancy release work, it's holding space for women to befriend their body and befriend their womb and their sensuality, sexuality, menstruality again, or just make peace with the vision that they had,
Yeah.
you know, that they'd held onto, or maybe dreamed about their whole life, you know, and then like the situation came, and it went for them horribly wrong. Obviously, like, everyone is happy that the mother and the baby are safe by the end, but then there's still this experience
Yeah.
that probably get voiced. So that's been really powerful work as well. And then other great teachers, actually, that I would really, really recommend. Atira Tan, I've done her women's trauma informed training. She does a lot of work around young girls and sex trafficking. So very,
Fantastic. Wow. Yeah.
Very powerful. Yeah, I really, really recommend. And she had Lorraine, God, like it's gone out of my mind, but that was a brilliant training that I did. I think sometimes I just go for myself just to see, just because
Yeah.
I want during lockdown and stuff, I wanted containers for me to be held, and because I love going
I know, I'm
and
the same. I'm
like,
like, is this for my professional development or for my personal? Maybe it's a
but
bit
it
of
has to
both.
be. And I think for
It does,
me,
it
I'm
is
like,
both.
it has to be embodied in us first, and
It
then
does. I 100% agree. Yeah. Yeah.
another woman I trained with, I went to Portugal last year. Again, Sophia Adjorno, a woman's health change cycle, a woman's health training, but so rooted with TCM, traditional Chinese medicine,
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
I'm a yin yoga teacher, so it was just made total sense. And that was an amazing, because I went to that and then came home and the boys were placed with me. So
Okay.
that was very that was a great space for me to just be totally supported and just get my my nervous system and rest in place, but also have a lovely little holiday to myself. So yeah, there's some big teachers. And then obviously like Mary Kennedy has been, like, she's a good friend of mine, but I would have started out with Mary she would have been a yoga teacher, and then sure, mad about how Mary wove in the Celtic wheel. So I probably would be working with the Celtic wheel myself now a good, I don't know, like could be the guts of 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So I think for me, Mary's just somebody as a friend I'll always come back to. She's been incredible to me through these like she'll just turn up some days with a bag of dinners.
Oh, great.
And just rock up and be like, the lads love lasagna, don't they? And I'm just like, oh, I really don't want to cook today. I'm so tired.
Yeah. I'm on her Celtic wheel at the moment.
Brilliant.
Yeah, because kind of would have been doing it myself. Like, you could have picked it up through bits and bobs or reading books and stuff like that. But like everyone who would have been speaking about it, they're all like, Mary Kennedy, Mary Kennedy. I'm still like, right, I'm doing it this year. And she's just the energy. Oh, she's just great.
And every
so
year,
knowledgeable. And
every year she does it, like, it's because I've done the work with Mary from in her in the yoga studio, and then just how Mary has developed put her own stamp on the framework of the Celtic calendar, because obviously she would have been heavily influenced by Dolores Whelan's Ancient Ever New Celtic book, and Mary brings Dolores on all her work.
I know she's on all the calls, and I'm like, this is so great. It's so powerful to see it, like almost each generation, like and I mean that in a respectful way, where it's like, these people, like, my God, I can't even imagine the environment when Dolores was doing this work, how it would have been received. And then, and now it's so spoken about everywhere,
It's a digestible cycle.
The
Celtic wheel will ask of you. Like, I mean, anyone who does it will know that if you try and skim past the Cailleach or Samhain without, and actually, if you're actually sitting with your Samhain, you know all about it. So if you try to skim past it, you're going to get a Samhain at Baltina. Yeah. It's going to come and grab you on the arse at some point. So I think that's, I love that about Mary, like, she's so honest and authentic, and she's just living the work, and that's like Mary, somebody that I will consistently come back to and pop in, because she's evolving all the time, and there's real sisterhood in I love that in Mary as well. She's a great woman for the sisterhood,
which is so important, because well, it's one of, I guess it's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast, to make sure I was getting people on, because I was like, it's so great there's so many amazing people, particularly women, doing so many amazing things, and I'm like, it's just, there's no need to be like, and I know you're not like this, but like competing with one another, it's actually like, it's like rising water lifts all boats, or I always use the analogy of like coffee shops or gyms, but I think coffee shops, if you're living in Ireland, particularly in Dublin, makes a lot more sense, where I'm like, how many coffee shops are there in Dublin, and I'm like, they all do the same thing. It's all coffee, but there's so many different flavors, and actually, there's people might go to a particular coffee shop because it's close, or they like the coffee, or they like the style, they like the environment, the particular barista they like, or whatever it is. And I'm like, but everyone goes because they've found a flavor or a space that works for them. And everyone buying coffee is good for all the coffee people, and then it's good for people because they're going to a coffee shop. So I remember for me, when I started working for myself, you know, you're dealing with that sister wound of being like, oh my God, am I good enough? And sure, why would I bother if someone else is doing the work and everything? But I'm like, no, just think of coffee shops, you know? I'm like, it's
You're also
all
your lived and learned experience.
exactly.
And I'm like, I work with women now, coaching. I'm not really mad at coaching, but on I'd say like facilitating or mentoring, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose like that's what I'm saying to them. I am not trying to empty what's in my brain and hand it to you. Like you're coming to me with your craft, and
Exactly.
we're like weaving that into like that, like basically just fine tuning your niche so that you
It's your own
can.
language, or you know, it's finding your dialect of the same language. It might just be giving people the structures, like the way you mentioned in the Menstruality, the MLP, the leadership program, where it's like the maps give you a structure to work with,
Yeah.
or you know, a language maybe that makes
It.
it exactly, that makes you be able to embody it to then bring it out to other people, which I think is so important.
Especially for me now, looking like I'm into the fourth or fifth. Actually, I think it's the fifth cycle of Red Alchemy. It's probably there going into the fourth year, but I've done 5. This is the fifth cycle starting, because one year I did 2. I was very ambitious. It was during lockdown or something. But now I have those women on this cycle, 6 of them from previous, who started with me with very basic understanding of menstrual cycle awareness, and now here they are, like we're peers, we're allies, and I hold an inner circle with them, and we show up together, and we bring all those sticky bits of the what's scary in showing up in the work, and
Yeah.
because they're the bits that we don't learn when we go on trainings. We don't learn how to lead this work, and for me that's where I kind of saw, because I know through witnessing women in their droves in the lockdown coming to me to do this work, running out, setting up their Instagram page, going berserk, and giving it like 2 to 4 months, maybe 6 months, and then the Instagram page just goes dormant. They go back to their yoga or something, and I'm like, no, you're not going to come and do this and turn into like have my community that, you know what I mean? It takes years to build it. I said, you're asking people to come to you with their womb and trust you to look after the most sacred part of their body.
Yeah.
And it's so deep. And I said, people mightn't even think of it that deep. And I said, but you're asking people to come to you and pay you so that they can talk about something really vulnerable as their menstrual cycle and the fluids that leave their vagina every day, or what, you know. So like it's a huge big deal. So that's where I've kind of been going. It's been really interesting to me seeing, okay, there's a big fear of judgment in the work. How do you show up with this work in your workplace? Let's say you're a corporate person, and like it's it's very white collar, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm working with periods. You know, that mightn't be as acceptable in some workplace. There could be a lot of, or families, there could be a lot of people making a fool of people for trying to take them down, you know. So for me, that's been really interesting, is to work with women and work with the visibility around the work, because it's one thing you declaring yourself to the world as, I am here now, I am a voice for women. But then how do you get the world, how do you get the world to listen? Because just because you've decided to step into those shoes, what why all of a sudden would people just trust and come to you? So that's what I've been like. Yeah, I say, like, it's a yoga teacher. I've been a yoga teacher for years. Teaching yoga is so easy now because it's not taboo to teach yoga. But 20 years ago, it was like, oh, you're one, she does yoga, you know.
Well, I remember, like, so about 20 years ago would have been when I was, remember, like, trying to get the yoga books like out of the library, because there was nothing. The only place I remember like then as a teenager would be like a yoga class in the local GA club, and really it was like, you know, to like, I don't know, tone up or whatever. Like it wasn't yoga. It was, but it wasn't, you know, not on a spiritual or energetic level. Yeah, so even that, like, you know, it's such a different, there's
That's what
obviously
I
a need
mean.
for it. I think the work comes out when it's needed, you know.
If you're a yoga teacher and this is what I'd be saying to like some of the women that I'm mentoring. I'm going, keep the yoga going, and then just start because that's what I did. I obviously transition and then start bringing in this posture is really supportive for this pose. And then people all of a sudden going, that's me today. Or if anyone's ovulating and they're having ovulation pain, or you feel like maybe you've got cysts, or you know, you want to conceive, like here's a great pose to clear out your tubes, you know, or like bring more chi into your tubes. All of a sudden people are going, that's lifestyle. This is helping my lifestyle. Or like, here's a yoga pose that's going to really help with your bowel movements. Like people love that. They don't talk about it, but they're like, yeah, who doesn't want healthy digestion? So it's much easier to come out and hide behind a few yoga poses and the language of yoga. But for you to come out and be saying, here I am on day 7 of my menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
That's you. Like it's very, very different. So it's for me to have been able to really articulate that I'm saying this is a really different beast that we're working with. And it's very interesting when I do see like that declaration of self to the world as, yeah, I'm going to advocate and I'm really passionate about this work. And then the heartache of when the world they're not witnessed by the world. And I'm like, it's going to take a long time.
It's going to take a good while. Because even when, like, I can only imagine how it's being, you know, you've obviously been in this space a lot longer, but like I even remember when I started talking about like training for women, because I would have come from the sports side, you know, and even in the gym I was working in, you know, they're all super supportive of it. But one of the lads, he was a bit younger, he'd be like, oh, here we go, it's periods again. And he was only messing, but like he was
even
just like, oh, Sinead's here with the
not only
periods and
messing
hormones.
Because the thing is, he's not only messing, it's like it's a slight. There's an element of they don't realize when they do that they're exposing their own discomfort. But in that it's still gaslighting is the wrong word, but you in that situation you want to go to that person. What do you think that comment does?
Yeah, it's true actually.
Goes because what that comment does is it's like say people go, oh hi, they meet you as a couple. Hi Sam, what do you do? I work in TV. Kitty, what do you do? Oh, I work with women and their menstrual cycles. Oh Jesus, oh God, we won't talk about that. And I'm like, oh okay, if
you don't want to, that's fine.
So I'm just like, that's fine. I can just see there's a lot of discomfort. I'm not going to push it. Absolutely not push that conversation with you because I'm actually, number one, I'm out. But and like that, why do I want to try and convince you that what I do is fucking amazing?
Yeah, I know. But like even at that stage, like it is funny where now it's totally talked about, like so much more now. It's still got a long way to go, but like it's a lot more spoken about in the sports world. It's a lot more spoken about in gyms, even on Instagram you can see more people on a biology level. Yeah, the energetics, you need to drip feed in the energetics for sure.
And for me, that's where I'm like, this is where a lot of blocks are happening, because a lot of people are living in the world either so in the spirit world or so in the natural world, the material world. Just so then there is this body and spirit disconnection. So you know, you like I say Red Alchemy, my course around the menstrual cycle is the spirit, the science, and the sacredness. It's interesting that
I love that. I'm like she's speaking my language, because that was my experience when I started getting into it. I was like, I feel like there's elite athlete, like how to perform with your cycle, or there's like super, you know, very
people painting their face with blood.
Yeah, literally, like, you know, very, exactly. Which, and I'm like, I'm for everything. Yeah, exactly. But I was like, there's nowhere for, I guess, the people like me who I'm like, I'm interested in both and I want to do
Yeah.
both, or even, and you might be somewhere along that
And they're
spectrum, but I was
both
like, I think
needed.
it's, that's what I mean. I was like, I actually think where the beauty and where the medicine really
Yeah.
comes from is being able to integrate the two. And that's, I think it's happening more and more, you know, the fact that you're doing it in Red Alchemy for your kind of mentorship, and you know, even the fact that I'm doing, you can see it come out in other places where I think people are starting to recognize there's a need for both, and
A
people
holistic
might come
approach.
at that exactly. And you know, I know that word gets bandied around so much, but I do think it's really
Does it? Do you
important.
think?
There's a time and place for everything, you know.
You think it gets bashed around?
I think maybe on a consumer level the importance of the word is misconstrued. So
Okay,
it's
yeah, yeah.
used, do you know what I mean? Where like it's used by people in an
Token. You're thrown in holistic for, and it's not.
exactly, you know, and or maybe people are like, oh, so holistic means woo woo, or kind of like not medical. Do you know, where actually holistic is like, no, it's whole body.
Whole
Like
package.
it's exactly,
Yeah.
it's the, you know. So I think maybe maybe that's me projecting my own biases on it, but I do feel like maybe there's a
I would agree with that because
mm,
I mean, look, I'm like I said on this fertility journey, and you know, I've been doing a fertility protocol there that's
mm,
very science based, and you know, I've had to take different injections and different medications and stuff, which was hard for me initially because I really
mm,
thought, "Oh, I can spiritualize myself into pregnancy," and I by goddess did I try, but it turns out my hormones, there was so much cortisol in my body, I
mm,
really needed that help, um and also just like that's what I was saying to you, like say that for women who don't have this dreamlike
exactly,
relationship with their cycle or their body, um it's kind of just going, well, if I can bring some level of healing and easier, make
mm,
I suffered chronic pain. I was bed bound every month, and
yeah,
eating the painkillers and just mental health was really challenged.
mm,
Then when I found out about the void, like when Alexandra Opa, when I was on my training in Spain or in
mm,
Italy, and she just said to me, Kitty, darling, you're an ecstatic. The void is going, she goes, being an ecstatic, it's going to be your greatest gift, but it's also your greatest curse because
mm,
feel like, you know, things can be orgasmic and then things can be hell, you know?
yeah.
So it's just this thing of feeling so magnificently, but that you can't feel
Just the
ovulation
good all the time.
and then not feel, for me, I couldn't
Yeah.
not um the brunt of my menstrual cycle.
Mm,
Whereas now, like um I don't take like maybe every 14, 16 cycles I might get an absolute banger and I have to take
yeah,
paracetamol, but then I just lash on a few castor oil packs to support the liver, you know, if I
exactly.
after my bleed or whatever. But yeah, I think that's the thing. It's informed choice. That's what this work is to me. It's
Yeah.
informed choice. Knowledge, that's why I say if knowledge is power, wisdom is informed choice, because if
Mm,
you have that knowledge, if you have that the power and knowledge, then you're able to go into your healthcare provider and say
I agree.
X, Y, and Z. And I even see it with my own fertility protocol. I've said to him,
Mm,
no, you have me down as if I'm ovulating on day 12 or 13. Like I don't. I'm ovulating on day 10. So I'm taking my trigger shot
mm,
8. And he's like, okay, let's try it the next month. You know, like
yeah.
whereas he's not just going, shut up, you, what would you know? Like he here, like I said to him recently,
Which
I
is
think,
brilliant.
yeah, because he knows that I'm really interested in my body and I'm really
Mm,
invested in it. Like I said to him recently, I have a bit of pain in my left fallopian tube. Um, I wonder could there be a cyst there? And he's like, well, come in and we'll give it a scan. Like,
amazing.
so to be listened to, now that's it, somebody
Mm,
specializing in women's health and fertility. And that's what I've paid for. But that's so lovely for me to have that
yeah.
um that I'm validated by a professional that in the field that, you know, Now there are other things. When I said to him, oh, I went to a kinesiologist, he said my pituitary gland is completely shot and that's why my insomnia is so bad. And he just went, oh, did he? And I was like, what? If my flipping pituitary gland is out, I'm not going to sleep. And if I'm not sleeping, like what? Like, and that's the thing. Like I was at a point where my insomnia was so chronic that if you've got seriously bad insomnia, this might be helpful for people that are trying for or on the path to motherhood or parenthood. Your circadian rhythm is in a really bad way and it just gets very confused. So it won't send the correct messages to your ovaries to release the egg and tell your body to get pregnant and stay pregnant. Because there's one thing releasing an egg and creating an embryo, but if your body's like, oh, hang on, this place is a mess, you know, like, so for me, knowing this about my body, it meant I was going, right, well, if he's not going to listen to me on that, I'll have this kinesiologist. But that's the doctor then from the medical background who doesn't, he's like, I don't care what someone from alternative medicine has to say because I trump what he has to say. But for me, I'm like, me actually, because what I did was work also with him and his holistic approach, and my insomnia was gone within 6-7 weeks. And
Incredible.
like the thing, he said he muscle tested and he said my pituitary gland, this is Stephen Rohan, I'm probably saying it name, and he's in Dunleary, so definitely he's I'm back with him now because with the bereavement I wanted some support, you know, and he's been, but definitely Stephen, Roughan or something like that, but he's a kinesiologist in Dunleary, so anyone who can get to Dunleary, get to that man because he's just incredible. But when last year he said to me, there is no way you can conceive if your pituitary gland is out like that, because it's the communicator for sleep. And so then he said, we need to get you to about 70%, your pituitary gland to function at about 70%. So after I had my laparoscopy, my left tube was blocked. And I just went deep into like really caring for myself, and I was meticulous with my sleep hygiene. And I went back to him and he said, I can't believe it. It's at 100%. And didn't think we'd get you there. I thought we'd plateau at maybe 70 or 80 and it would be a real slow climb. Now I still can, that's something that in my cycle around ovulation, I can have a little bit of insomnia issues, but I know now I have to get out and exercise. And by that, I just mean an evening walk with the doggy down the canal is wonderful, because it just gets me away from the laptop, the phone. Especially now after last night I was holding space, I just get myself out, walk to the canal, with my feet on the land, and I'm sleeping great now. Whereas I can go, and it's the worst, like you're able for so much more when your sleep is there. But like, so yeah, so for people who are you know, who maybe are having that challenge like I have been, definitely have a look at exploring your circadian rhythm. So here's my lads have just burst in the door.
I was wondering if you had time just before we jump off, because I'd love, and I'm sure everyone who's listening would love to hear more about Red Alchemy and kind of where they can find more information about that.
So my website, kittymaguire.com, and or my Instagram page is Kitty Maguire Menstrual Mentor.
Brilliant. And just for anyone who's listening, I guess a quick one-liner. So Red Alchemy is a school to teach facilitators about how to facilitate around menstrual cycle awareness. And
I have a couple of different layers to it. So there's people, just anyone, like teach primary school, teach anyone, and that's like an MCA informed self-embodiment. It's about 30 hours, but it's done, you can do it on a self-learning pace, or you can do it through the live calls, and that's done slowly over You can do it as quick or as slow as you want. Slower is better because you have a listening partner and you have a community. And then I have the facilitator training, which is about a 60, 70 hour, and there's an immersion in that. We come together. This year we're down in Ballydehob.
We're just
4th of September, something like that, for 5 days. And then the mentorship is a year long. So what that means is,
oh wow,
difference of that is it's the facilitator program plus there's like 6 coach, like one-on-one mentoring sessions. There's explorations of your cycle, and then there's guest teachers on that as well. So you're working on your woman wound and your mother wound, if that's a part of your work. And you're also working with the big, deep imposter syndrome that comes with the fear of getting yourself out into the community. So it's quite rich and quite rounded, and there's some business kind of aspects to it as well, so that you feel equipped and able. So the thing about it is, it's like, I don't do this work for you. I provide the space, and we work like, that's why I say, make it clear to people, a mentor isn't there to do the work. It's a relationship that myself and the person has, and I just provide a space for that person to explore their creativity, to make safe mistakes and learn from them. Because sometimes I think people think, oh, I'll go and she's going to make this happen for me. But it's like, I have to be clear that if you show up and do the work, that's when the results happen. It's you know, with this work, what you get out, what you put in, you get back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Reward you, I feel, in tenfold. You give it 1% and you'll get 10 times that back, you know. So 100%, it just comes back in gold folds. So yeah.
Stunning. Well, it sounds absolutely incredible. So I'll make sure now in the show notes that I'll have the link and where people can find out about it. But look, Kitty, obviously the seagulls are kicking in now. Kitty, I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming on. You were absolutely amazing. Just gave loads of your time there, just talking all about the work that you do and why it's
my
so
pleasure.
Important.
I love it.
Yeah,
you love
I know,
it.
me too. I'm like, we could talk for hours, but no, it's great. And this is exactly why I wanted to create this podcast, is to kind of have these discussions and give
well
people.
Done.
Thanks.
It's a huge accomplishment, and it's huge work, and like, it's lovely. It's lovely to have. So thanks to you, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yay.